Hey everyone, thanks very much for coming tonight. I'm Sam and I'm part of the CX team here at Granola. For those of you that don't know Granola, it's an app that transcribes your meetings, enhances any notes that you take with AI to give you awesome meeting notes that you can then share with your team. I'm really excited to be joined tonight by Dimitri, CEO of another hot London AI startup, Gradient Labs.
Thank you, Sam. Hey everyone, I'm Dimitri. I'm the CEO of Gradient Labs, one of the 3 co-founders. So for all who don't know what we do, probably all of you, we do automate customer support and customer operations for larger regulated companies like banks and fintechs in general.
So Dimitri, can you tell us a bit about the origin story behind Gradient Labs? Where did the whole thing come from?
That's a typical VC question. So literally every VC asks this question as the first thing whenever I meet somebody for the first time. So that's well reversed. So brace yourself. No. So I think the starting point was that all 3 of our co-founders, and myself included, were part of Monzo. Monzo is a digital bank here in London, in the UK. I joined them probably as employee number 30-ish, and was leading all things data science and machine learning engineering from day one. So I was quite lucky to bet on the right horse and kind of propel my career in that way many years ago. So I stayed around there for 7 years. And throughout that time, we have been working within operations area, financial crime and customer operations, customer support as well within the bank, because that was kind of one of the biggest opportunity areas for the banks to have with data science and ML models. And so throughout that time, we kind of really understood the problem of how customer operations work in a larger company, how financial crime works, how customer support works, and so on, really firsthand. And I think fast forward 7 years or so, when GPT-4 came around, it really dawned on us that there will be a seismic shift in how companies operate on the customer support side and customer operation sides. So really the way the main mode of operation right now is like you write guidance or process how something's supposed to be solved and executed, and then you hire tons and tons of people to actually follow that guidance and execute it over and over again. Right? So that's kind of how all of customer ops, like in a very simplified way, works. And so the core idea that we had back then is that look, actually, almost all companies run support and customer ops like this, and sort of the common denominator are those SOPs, or standard operating procedures. And we said, why don't we let the companies keep that process? They know how to scale it, they know how to write those, they know how to use them to scale their business. And why don't we do exactly the same, but help them to execute those SOPs via AI? And as GPT-4 came around, it became quite obvious to us that, okay, for the first time, it actually became possible. With GPT 3.5, it was like probably, I would say not, but GPT-4 was kind of on par with junior, fresh grad style agents. And that's why I said, okay, this is a very big thing. We believe it will fundamentally change how companies will operate in 5 to 10 years, and we want to be at the forefront and kind of shaping that direction. Very long-winded answer, but as I said, it's well reversed. Every VC asked me that. So.
No, that was great. So I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
For someone who works at an AI startup, I was quite an AI skeptic until, I would say, embarrassingly recently. Can you remember a particular example or the kind of moment when you realized that actually this is, we're kind of onto something here?
Yeah. It's probably a bit pathetic as well, but I'm going to mention it anyway. I was quite late to the journey. I think it took me to GPT-4. So we're now measuring time in GPT-3, right? So everyone's familiar. It probably took me until GPT-4 to realize how powerful the technology will be. And the way I realized it, we actually went on vacation somewhere in Egypt. The brain slowed down. I was lying somewhere on the beach, was trying this thing. It's like, oh my God, that thing is freaking amazing. Like, it can do so much stuff. But the first idea was actually not automation of something valuable. It's like, oh my God, we can print infinite amount of T-shirts and sell them. So that was literally the first idea that we had. And we were lying on the beach with my partner. It's like, oh, let's try it out, actually. Yes, so that was the moment when I actually realized, okay, there's really something interesting to it. Obviously, we never followed up on this idea, but pretty soon after, because we were so deep in the space, and we were kind of very deep domain experts within operations, it became very, very clear that that's the area. Actually, we had a second idea as well. I believe kind of analytics and enterprise search space will be disrupted or is being disrupted as well. That was kind of the two contenders, but we felt like we just understand operations a lot deeper than anything else and would be able to kind of benefit from that in that space.
Yeah, makes sense. And you spent kind of quite a while building the product before you launched it. What were some of the things that you learned during that kind of like pre-launch period?
Yeah. I think, I'm not sure how it was with Granola actually. We took a slightly unconventional journey. So we got into YC, but then we didn't end up going there because we felt like they would force us to build something that we don't believe in. Because the YC model kind of works or worked always very differently. You kind of go there for 3 months, you build something very quickly, you iterate, you kind of launch, and you make your first, you earn your first money in those 3 months. And we took a very different route because we were aiming, or like all our background was in financial services, and we essentially said, okay, we need to build something that would be accepted by any bank. And how do you build AI agents that are actually accepted by any banks? And so we had essentially like 3 pillars to us. So it said, okay, if we can show that they can generate sufficiently or significantly better customer experience for their end customers, surely it would be a good thing, and we just need to prove it objectively versus the current human teams. So that was kind of criteria number 1. Criteria number 2 was if we can also show that those agents can perform at a much higher quality than the current teams. So that was criteria number 2. And then criteria number 3 was cost savings, essentially. And so we said we only can really launch those things with banks if we can show it's a no-brainer for the customer, for the regulator, and for the company's P&L. And that's why we essentially, for the first probably 14 months, obsessed about quality and obsessed about hitting that bar. And in a way, we built the product very differently than probably it would have been at YC. And the reason for that was essentially that we spent so much time, but we really knew what good looks like. Because we were domain expert in that space, we didn't need to ask somebody else, oh, is it good now? Is it good now to launch? We kind of knew, okay, it just feels silly. If you talk to it, it just feels stupid, like another chatbot. And so we really kind of iterated for 14 months before we launched. But then when we launched with the first customers, it literally blew their mind. It was like, oh my God, it's better than our best human agent on the support team. Not for everyone, but for 40% of our customers, the AI agent has a better CSAT than the best human on the team. And that kind of allowed us, and we only could get there because we kind of are obsessing about it for 14 months. It's potentially risky, maybe dumb, I don't know. But in hindsight, it was a good thing for us because we have built something that is clearly different from everyone else who kind of was trying to launch very quickly and iterate. And what we're finding now is that once you are in the trenches of scaling the company, you have lots of customers and kind of really have maybe 100 times more demands on you from all the different sides, it becomes really, really hard to break ground on achieving really kind of impressive stats or quality. So it becomes much harder later on. So in a way, I was quite happy that we did it upfront.
Nice, thanks. And you mentioned that domain expertise. Did you ever sort of question that decision of whether to stay focused on fintech or whether to kind of go broader than that? Or was it kind of a no-brainer for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, when we started, we didn't decide to do it for fintechs. Okay. So we had the fintech background, but then we launched, and the first 10 customers were all literally fintechs. And we're like, wait a second, something is weird here. So we didn't advertise it on our webpage, so just like generic conversational AI. But literally all the 10 customers were fintechs. Probably also biased by our network, because we work at Monzo and all people we knew who were fintechs. And that's when it kind of doubled down on us that we really need to double down on that vertical, because you can really create a significant momentum if you focus on a particular industry, because you can sort of create much tighter brand awareness, because fintech has actually a very tight community in London. They're like well-matured publications, and you can work with them. And so you can do stuff a lot more effectively. But also fintechs are very different from everyone else. And we were not the first mover to the market in general, because they're like players. I'm not sure whether you guys know like Decagon or Sierra. Those are like larger US companies, and they're more horizontal. But really, to compete against them, we needed to pick our vertical, and naturally, obviously, we did what what we know best. It was quite a good decision in hindsight. After we have kind of specialized and announced it and kind of created this positioning and storyline, it really kind of started to resonate with potential customers.
Yeah, cool. And I read a blog a while ago that you or someone on the team wrote about going back to that point around the kind of human versus AI, whether or not to disclose to customers that they're speaking to an AI. For those that haven't read the blog, could you kind of expand on that a little bit? And I'd be interested to know if you've noticed any kind of nuances or changes there kind of over time with your customers or kind of between different customers.
Yeah. So just for context, probably 50% of our customers do disclose that it's an AI agent, and 50% essentially give it a human name. There is EU AI Act regulation that's coming out, like, I think next year or whenever it becomes effective, which essentially will force you to disclose it's an AI assistant. But right now it's not the case. Right now you can do that. But we see significantly different results. So all of those companies who actually don't disclose that it's an AI agent see significantly better CSAT. And the reason for that is just like, people are like, why? Like, how can it be better than a human? It's just like various factors, but just to name a few. Some companies are really complex and you need to be able to know and adjust lots of different information points, like different areas of the companies. And what happens in kind of larger, mature scale teams is that you have specialist teams and you start kind of bouncing a customer from one team to another. So it's kind of escalations and circles. Or the product is so complex that actually humans make mistakes all the time. And it turned out that you can get AI to be a lot more accurate with this and actually know everything. And so in this particular case, we saw actually some funny examples. Like today I saw a quote from some customer. They said like their end customer said, like, oh, your manager, you should be the manager of yourself. Essentially implying that the AI agent, which had a human name, was so good that the customer was suggesting you should be the manager of that team. But also, like, because we get those replies sometimes from our customers, they send us screenshots. They're literally like things like, oh my God, you're the best agent I've ever talked to on the support team. And they didn't know it. They didn't know it's AI behind it, but you literally get like lots of customer responses like that. And you get a lot less like, oh, talk to a human straight away without actually explaining what your issue is.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of your early customers really had that kind of mind-blown moment when they saw what the agent could do. Have you had any of those yourself where you've been really surprised at what it can achieve? I think there were lots of moments, but we have this Slack channel which is called Glap's Love. I mean, I'm sure every company has some sort of flavor of this, and we essentially like post like good or surprising outcomes where like literally end customers are mind blown, like how good something was. I was surprised. Like I actually made a LinkedIn post at some point, like way ago. Like somebody were testing Gen Z slang on our agents. I can't replicate it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to embarrass myself. But if you are really interested, you can find that LinkedIn post. It was literally like, I needed to look up at least 4 words or 5 words. I had no idea what they were asking, but the agent actually got it. Oh, brilliant.
The agent actually replied, oh, you want a replacement card or whatever it was. I actually can't remember. But that was quite surprising. It's like, oh my God, okay, you can be quite cryptic. You can really use whatever words you want.
Nice. I think one of our engineers, when we were testing at Granola, the ability to rewrite your meeting notes with AI, one of our engineers got all his meeting notes written in Gen Z slang as well. Meaningless to me. And I guess the other side of the coin on that one, what's something that you think will probably always need to be handled by a human, and why do you think that is?
I'm not sure whether about the always part.
So, oh, okay.
So maybe I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
But right now, they're like, I think the frontier is fairly clear right now. And so let me describe it like this. Like whenever you can hire a fresh grad and give them like a 5 to 10 pager on how to do a certain thing, and they will be able to do that, that's pretty much automatable at a very, very high degree of quality today, right? So that's already solved. I think the next frontier is when you hire people whom you need to train for a year or two to do a particular task because it requires expertise. Expertise which is not explicit on a piece of paper that you can just write down on 5 pages, but something that you learn through experience of doing a particular task over and over again and thinking deeply about this task. So this is like expertise and experience-based tasks. And I think that's the next frontier for us that we are thinking internally about. I do think it's solvable though, so that's why like never,
Yikes.
not sure. But it's coming. But right now, this kind of expertise-based tasks, nobody has tackled it yet, from what I've seen at least. And there are like still major pieces of kind of research to be done how to do it well.
Do you think that's a kind of advancement in models thing, or like how we use them?
Yeah, I would say probably the systems that we build around those.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like actually like our use case, customer support seems to be like, okay, you hire a bunch of fresh grads, seems simple, you don't need PhDs to work on that. But even that took a very, very long time to solve very well, and is still not completely solved, right? And yet at the same time, we have kind of claims from OpenAI that, like the newest model perform at PhD level. So those two statements obviously don't reconcile. But they're not really contradictory, because what it really means is that humans can do a lot more. Like they can actually observe, read, and learn from experiences in context, and LLMs can't right now, right? So like actually building some learning capability is what we spend a lot of time doing to make our agent really, really good. This is like very, very basic compared to what humans can, but it's not quite like, we didn't build a new LLM. It's just using LLM, you build additional systems component that try to replicate how humans can interact and what tools they have at their belt to kind of to execute on jobs.
Whenever there's a new model that comes out, I always enjoy seeing the bar charts that are slightly higher than the previous bar, but it's good to know that that's fairly irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it certainly doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like we could solve our use case with GPT-4 already, so it's just...
And so thinking about some of the customers you have, I think a lot of people, myself included, would probably assume that fintechs would be quite slow to adopt new technologies. What are some of the ways that you've built confidence with them, with your agent?
Yeah.
Particularly the kind of more cynical ones, let's say.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about fintechs, we actually did a survey at some point, how customers are satisfied with customer support in different industries. And actually, fintech or financial services are one of the highest satisfaction industry, which was surprising to me.
Yeah.
But it means the bar for fintechs is already incredibly high. And that kind of makes sense, right? So there's a lot of regulation, a lot of stuff that you can just mishandle. And so people really try to do a really good job. Now, there are things that you can do. Obviously, they are very, very risk averse, but it also depends. Like, for example, we have a large regulated bank as a customer. That is a very, very different ballgame to a larger fintech, for example, right? But I think the key thing that kind of I realized over the last year is that, like, in order to adopt those systems safely, you need to compare them, or the way you do it is you need to compare them rather to humans than traditional software systems. And really the route to adopting those systems safely in fintechs or like larger regulated banks is to compare to humans and say, look, we can actually do a much better job. Like it's much better outcome for the customers, it's much better outcome for the regulator and for the company's P&L. And so we essentially created a process for us how we call it a trust escalator. Internally, it's not a thing, but it's essentially just a 4-step process of how we get companies to gradually get confidence into what they're going to be receiving. Because nobody wants to put an AI agent to 100% of their customers, like, and hope for the best, right? Like nobody would ever do that. So we have like phases of like, you first do some offline evaluation, red teaming, and try to break the agent. Then you literally launch it with like, I don't know, 30 or 40 conversations a day where you review every single conversation and kind of watch it very, very closely. And then you scale up very slowly. That's probably like a longish or longer process with financial institutions. Maybe some other companies in e-commerce or so wouldn't maybe do that. I actually don't know. But yeah, it's doable. So we just like boil the frog very slowly.
Okay, makes sense. And so going from companies who might be cynical or kind of slow to adopt, there's some companies out there who are adopting these sorts of tools kind of very rapidly. What do you think, what kind of potential are they still not realizing, or kind of what do you think the future is for them?
Well, are you talking specifically about support and ops area or more broader?
Yeah, just in CX and support, I guess.
Yeah, I think generally like we're surprisingly far away from really good kind of results in a sense of most of the stuff that we are seeing is that companies automating maybe 40 to 50% of their CX.
Okay.
Like companies maybe at the forefront automating, like complex companies I'm talking about, maybe 60 or 65%, but really like getting to 80 or 90% automation is really, really hard, and almost nobody has demonstrated it in the industry. So there's still a long way to go. But doing it at the right quality and like doing it in a way that it creates exceptional customer experiences, that's the key, right? So it's actually for no of the companies that we're working with, it's a cost play. For all of them, it's about customer experience. And that's something that we learned through the process as well. We're like, okay, clearly it's going to be something that's saving costs and like, I don't know, serving customers more efficiently. It's actually not. It's more about creating better customer experiences than you had before. And that's what the primary motivation is for most companies, which was a surprise for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kind of makes sense.
I mean, as someone who works in CX, it's kind of painful to kind of go through a process of a customer like not receiving great support. So completely understand that. And what are some of the barriers you think for getting to that kind of 80 to 90% at the moment?
Oof, I don't want to bore people too much with the technical details. It's actually like a longer implementation process because you essentially, what you need for that, you need to integrate a bunch of data points. You kind of need to be able to perform actions. But in the end, everything boils down to writing down those SOPs, standard operating procedures. That's how businesses operate. And so the process is very repetitive and clear, right? So you write down SOP how to handle card replacement if you contact your bank and say, hey, I've lost my card. And then you build a bunch of tools that the AI agent can actually action on that card replacement, because from the get-go, obviously, it would not maybe have details about your card. It would not have a button to click to reorder your card. And so actually building those APIs and writing down the SOPs is what it takes. But it's really, like in order to get to 90%, you need maybe 100 SOPs, right? And if it takes you 2 weeks to write one, then you can 2 weeks times 100 is many, many weeks. And so that's why the process is actually quite hard. And nobody really got to it yet.
Okay, so it's much less about the technology and more about
investing
the actual
time,
investing.
But you could say, for example, like surely there must be something to do it much more effectively and better and faster, right? So I think that's...
I hope so.
that would be a fair challenge.
Yeah. And kind of in general, for any CX leaders who are kind of thinking about adopting a tool like yours, what advice would you give them other than contacting you for a demo?
The advice is like the interesting thing about the AI tools, especially like those more complicated ones, is it's very difficult to evaluate them on like a tabletop exercise, right? So you kind of see, okay, do they do voice? Do they do X and Y and Z, different channels? And all the vendors or all the companies you will evaluate, they were like, okay, they tick all the boxes. And that's the difficulty, right? So it's like, okay, how do you actually know what to use? It's actually the problem with all the AI tools. Like, I'm sure you guys have experienced it as well. It's like you want to do something and then you try a bunch of tools, but it's very hard to see upfront, will it work or not? And that's because you need to experience AI in order to see whether it will work for you or not. And that's the biggest kind of difference to a previous way of building software. You could actually kind of see how it works, how the UI is, and like, okay, it's like it solves my purposes need. With AI, you need to experience it. And now, how do you experience AI? Like now, I feel it's actually quite difficult because you need to implement it almost like in a live stage, let it talk to your customers, and then you realize, oh my God, it's actually pretty good. And so in our case, for example, our sales motion, so we are like a sales motion companies where we don't have a product that you can try. We have a sales team that needs to work with you. And our goal is always to get customers to a live POC. And when we get them to a live POC, then it's typically like very, very clear what solution to go with, because they kind of see one solution, second solution by the side, and can compare it. And that's kind of the experience aspect of AI. And I think all AI products have that. I
think so, yeah. We get a bunch of questions. What makes Granola different to the other meeting note takers out there? And we're like, just try it. Just try it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned on LinkedIn that people could come tonight and grill you about grilling.
Oh.
Are we talking charcoal or gas?
Oh, charcoal, please.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank God for that. What's your favorite barbecue recipe to cook at the moment?
At the moment, I find it quite convenient, because if you put something like a slow cook, I don't know, some meats, I don't know, short ribs, you can just put them in the morning, wait for 7 hours or 8 hours, and then when the guests arrive, you actually don't need to hassle and like do stuff. That feels quite convenient to me. So
nice.
that became like a favorite thing to do. But it's also just very impressive. People are literally impressed, like, oh my God, this tastes really, really good, because it's slow cooked meat.
Yeah.